Okay, so you'll find on Canvas the instructions, the evolution artist presentation I just went over about the digital art pioneers. Um, evolution, that's PDF. That's actually an assignment that I did when I was at UCI. The assignment was called Evolution, where we started with two basic parent shapes, duplicated them, recombined them in different ways. So the assignment that I give you, the design genealogy chart, is inspired by this, which was probably inspired by those pioneer digital artists that I showed you in the presentation. Um, but I'd like you to try out some very specific tools when you do this. I was new to Illustrator when I did this, and we didn't have a lot of instruction on the tools. But in the classes that I teach at ABC and OCC, we're really gonna spend a lot of time mastering some new tools and reviewing some of the tools that we learned last week working with shapes. So, because this one is kind of messy. I was new to Illustrator, and things just get more and more complex. But I have some great examples of assignments like this that were done specifically for the design genealogy assignment. So we'll look at that. And this one is something that I did uh, that, let's see if we can open it up. Really a lot going on here, way more than you need to do for this assignment, but it's there for you if you just need to get an idea of the assignment and what we're going to be doing. We're going to be starting out with some parent shapes and combining them in different ways, and I just put notes on what tools I used. Like I used Pathfinder for some of these recombinations, blending down here. So that will be there for you as a reference. Okay, but let's look at what the assignment actually is. So for ABC, you're going to just name this your last name, first initial dash genealogy. OCC, the naming protocol is a little different. You name it last name, first initial dash let's see, for OCC, let's get the assignment instructions here. Exercise 2 for OCC, you're going to name it last name, first initial, exercise 2. Let's see, oh, there it is. So remember, for OCC, you're naming it last name, first initial dash EX2. Okay, so I'm going to show some examples. Okay, so she started with two simple kind of parent shapes, and then she's duplicated them out and recombined them in different ways. Very clever approaches. That just looks like the most beautiful pink mold I've ever seen. Some ideas maybe are interesting, not so clean. Others come together really nicely. Maybe could be work as a logo or the start of a logo for some of these. And this would be this is a portrait document with one set of parents, and that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 generations. So that is the assignment criteria for if you're doing a portrait size document. That you need at least one set of parents and 1, 2, 3, 4 generations. That should be specified on the assignment if you're doing portrait. And if you're doing Yeah, so if you're doing portrait, then fill the space with at least 4 generations. If you're doing landscape, fill the space with at least 3 generations. And I think I forgot to put in the instructions here. For portrait, you do at least one set of parents, and landscape you should do at least 2 sets of parents. So let me show you an example of that. Let's see. So this one, let's see if this one followed the criteria. So this one took a very different approach. Her parents were much more complex. Here, let me just reset the essentials so things are a little cleaner to look at. Okay, so she used some tools to make the parents very complex. What tool do you think she used to get this illustrative quality to these parent forms? If you said warp, you got it. So remember the warp tool, all those exciting tools under the width tool, all of these tools she might have used. Twirl tool, looks like twirl tools going on in there. Pucker. So she had fun with those tools in creating these parent shapes. So she's got, this one is a landscape document where she's got 2 sets of parents and she's got 1, 2, 3 generations. So that follows the criteria. The only thing is, I'd like you guys to be conscious of your layout choices on the when you're creating the chart. So you don't want to have things that are too close to the edges of the margins, although that's probably fine. It's just that she has a lot of empty space in the middle, which we're going to learn more and more throughout the course. Principles of layout and design, and one of the rules of thumb that we're going to find is you don't want to have a lot of empty space in the middle. We'll find out why in upcoming lessons, but if you can avoid that, have more space maybe around the edges, less empty space in the middle, that would be a good way to go for creating this chart. But that came together in an interesting way. Okay, let's look at another example. Okay, and you don't have to have the lines. Lines are great to follow a chart, but this one is nice and neat, and it doesn't even use line. So the 2 shapes at the beginning, and this one took a different approach. It looks like a dinosaur egg, a dinosaur emerging from these 2 simple shapes. Kind of different way to go with that. I like this one. This one's approach. This one is the portrait. 1 set of parents. 1, 2, 3, 4 generations. We got representational simple forms as the parents, and then they combine, and then looks like in the end they turn into Jackson Pollock paint splatters. And I like the choice to have the thick black lines, slanted, very modern art. Very cool. This one was interesting in the way that the lines are designed with a style, reminds me of kind of a track. And we've got lots of use of different functions in the Pathfinder panel, which gives you these interesting cutouts. We're going to learn about the Pathfinder panel today and how to recombine shapes like these, or combine shapes and have different cutouts in the intersecting areas. So we'll see how Pathfinder works today and learn how it can be used to do croppings of your of vectors, which those of you who are working on the landscape last week, I know it was maybe frustrating for some who wanted to trim off the edges. Well, this week we're going to learn how you can trim off the edges of things and crop using Pathfinder. Okay, what else? This one blows everybody away. Here's the one that blows everybody away. So this artist, he started out with some representational logos here, vectors, and then combined them, and that's where the magic happened, when the way he duplicated them and combined them into all of these very interesting forms, really unique forms, where he started with not his own, just maybe he image traced them, or he used a pen tool to trace around to, and he came in with some good skills to begin with, you can tell, and just was very imaginative in how he recombined Puma and Nike. So when Puma and Nike get together, magic happens. So we have all these forms here. So this is the birds and bees of vector graphics. So we have just beautiful, beautiful designs going on here. He's ready to design for the surf shops. Let's see. So then the next generation, it's even more complex, and we're seeing a really interesting use of opacity overlays, different differences in opacity, creating complexity, and just really nice attention to detail and layout and form. And then we have a blend going on here. We're going to look at how to blend different objects together, kind of like a gradient, but one object is gradually blending into the other. And this looks three-dimensional. Whoops, let me zoom out. So some of these look really 3D in how he was just working with the forms and kind of distorting them, duplicating, and just created a beautiful set of images that this could be a whole portfolio in itself. A portfolio of work, all of these pieces. And then we have this one's a fun one. It reminds me of Lisa Frank's art. If you guys remember Lisa Frank, I used to collect Lisa Frank designs when I was very young, in grade school. So it's kind of stencil cutouts with Pathfinder. Exciting stuff going on with strokes and cutouts. Really cool stuff that she can use. So you might generate some material that you could use, for example, for the t-shirt design, or for your own logo for a project. And finally, this one, she came up with some really clean forms, interesting forms here. Let's zoom out. So she's got 3 sets of parents, and Pathfinder is creating these interesting fragmentations here. And then look at this. What does this look like? This looks like AOL, right? Who would have thought these are AOL's parents? Just some gorgeous looking forms that can be turned into logos or just design elements. Okay, so that's genealogy charts, the examples. Okay, so how do we do this? Let's get started. So I'm gonna make a new document, file new in Illustrator. Well, make sure to launch Illustrator. The orange Adobe Illustrator icon on the dock. Click on that, launch it. go to File, New, or Command N. If you are an ABC student, you're gonna name it last name, first initial, genealogy. If you're an OCC student, you're gonna name it last name, first initial, dash EX2 for exercise 2. Okay, for all of you, go ahead and just click on print. Even though for OCC students, you're not going to be printing these, but it's an exercise, so you're just going to turn in the digital files to the Dropbox. But I like to choose print anyway because, again, this could be brainstorming for artwork that could be used in a project that potentially you could print. Yeah, so print letter size is what we're using, and name it last name, first initial. So I'm gonna go last name, first initial, dash, and then if you're an OCC student, EX2. If you are an ABC student, name it genealogy. Genealogy. Okay. And the naming is specified on the assignment instructions. Okay, you can take it out of points, put it in inches if you want. So you see it's 8.5 by 11. And remember the criteria. If you're doing portrait, you're doing at least one set of parents and at least 4 generations, including the parents. And if you're doing landscape, make at least 2 sets of parents and at least 3 generations, including the parents. Okay, I'll go ahead and go with landscape, and then I'll leave all the other options as they are default and click create. Okay, so we're going to be using the shape tools again, and you could also experiment with the shaper tool this time around if you'd like. The difference between the shape tools and the shaper tools, the shaper tool, you freeform draw. So whereas with the shape tools, I just went to the tear up. Shape tools, you click and drag down. You choose a shape, click and drag down in a diagonal. With shaper tool, which is right underneath, you kind of freeform draw. So you, like if I want to draw a circle, I do that, and it makes a perfect circle. So it's really good for your ego because you're just drawing, and then it makes your drawing look perfect. Triangle. So if you like to draw that way, you could try drawing that way. I'm not sure if it will do stars. Let's see. Nope, too complex for it. And shaper tool will do cool things like it will let you, when you're on the shaper tool, it will let you combine, let's see, it lets you draw lines, and it lets you select and move things around, shapes around, and then let me just select this line and move it away, and it lets you combine the shapes. Let's see, let me just line this up if I can. I'm going to zoom in so that I can let my smart guides help me to line this up a little bit. That pink line, the pink line is the smart guide. And then it will let you draw through, and let me undo that, Command Z. Or let you draw through on overlapping areas to combine, and then now I have a combined shape. And then if I click on the arrow, let's see, then I can select the individual shapes and move them around. So what does it look like I'm making here? Click on the arrow again, and it's a combined shape and that kind of thing. So you can use a shaper tool to do that kind of thing. Or if I draw in the middle, it will make a cutout. or if I draw over this part, it will get rid of it, or over this line, it gets rid of it. So that's how Shaper tool works. It's kind of cool that way. And if I want to just make this into a normal shape without all this extra Shaper tool stuff going on, I should be able to, let's see, well, let me use the Shaper tools. Select, and if I go to, oh, and from my properties panel, I can click expand, or I can access expand from window control. From the control panel, there's also an expand button. There's also under object, I can click on expand. So what expand will do, if I click expand, now it's no longer a Shaper tool object group, it's just a regular shape, a new shape that I made from multiple shapes that were combined with the Shaper tool. But I'm gonna delete these, and I'm gonna still focus on using the shape tools that we were using since last week. So I'm gonna do similar steps with my regular shapes. So I'm gonna go to ellipse and draw out a parent here. I'll make a circle. I held down shift to make a perfect circle. I'm gonna give it some characteristics, so maybe I'll make it yellow with a black stroke, and then I want a triangle, so I'll take the polygon tool and click one time and choose 3 sides. One thing that I forgot to mention last time was that when you make a shape with the polygon tool, there's this little diamond here that you can click and drag on, and it lets you change the number of sides. So let's see, if I have access to the diamond there, I can click and drag. I'm dragging down, and it's increasing the number of sides. So you can do that after you've made the shape. So I want a triangle. Okay, so I've got a triangle. I'll click the swap button to make it a black triangle with a yellow stroke. And maybe I'll add an effect on this shape. So we haven't really covered effects yet. So I'm going to go to the effect drop down and choose one of my favorite categories of effects under stylize, drop shadow, and preview, and it's giving me this big drop shadow here, and then I can go in and make changes to the drop shadow. So opacity I can adjust, offset I can bring that lower, maybe instead of, and I can type in numerically 0.5, and that brings it closer, 0.5 instead of 0.1. And then the blur, maybe I want more blur or less blur. Oh, I brought the blur way down. Let's make it 0.04. And I can change the color, or I'll leave it for now. I'll say, okay, let's say I was happy with that. But then let's say I change my mind and I want to change the color of the shadow. So in order to do that, you need to go to a special panel where you can access your effects called the appearance panel. You can also access the appearance panel options from properties in the appearance section of the properties panel. So there's the drop shadow. I can edit it from here. It's just easy access where I can edit it and change the color of the shadow. Like, let's say I want a green shadow. Preview. I just changed the color. Another place you can edit effects is if you bring up the appearance panel under window in alphabetical order. There it is. And then what the appearance panel will show you is whatever appearances you have on an object. So if I select this circle, all it has is a black stroke saying 1 point and a yellow fill. But this one has the stroke and the fill, and it also has a drop shadow that I can edit. I can also turn off the visibility. Maybe I just want to change the color. So I click on drop shadow and I change the color to darker color. And I preview that and I say, okay, I like that. And if I wanted to turn it off, I can click the eyeball, visibility on and off. If I want to throw it in the trash, I can drag it to the trash or click or highlight it and click the trash and it's gone. But I want it back, so I'll say Command Z to undo, bring it back. Okay, so let's say those are my two parents that I'm happy with there. Gonna just make that bigger. Okay, so those are the first two parents. Now I'm gonna make some other parents here. So maybe I will, let's see, what should I do? Well, I'll try the rounded rectangle and hold shift and draw a square. And maybe I'll make the stroke thicker and rotate it with my selection tool. I'll go outside the bounding box and hold shift to rotate it at a perfect 45-degree angle. And maybe I want a gradient on my fill, so I'm going to bring up my gradient panel. And maybe I'll choose a different color to start with. Like maybe I like this green. And then I'm just gonna drag the green into the gradient, and maybe I want to throw out that black and add a color and double click to change that color because it's selected. Add another color, throw this color out. I'll click the trash. While I select that, I'll click the trash and I'll select this color, and then I can either double click on it to make changes to it, or I can double click on the fill and change the color to something else. Let's see, that's a good color to blend into that. Okay, that could work. And my stroke, let's see, the stroke, what can I do with the stroke? So for the stroke, I could do a few things. I could put a gradient on a stroke. Actually, maybe I want to change the corner radii, or maybe I want just maybe this one to be, this little knob to be brought all the way out like that. And let's see, what's another one? Maybe this one also can go all the way out, so it'll be that shape, a different kind of shape here. And then while I have my stroke selected in the front, so you select the fill, select the stroke selected, I can turn the stroke into a gradient as well by clicking on the stroke and then clicking the gradient button. So now I have a stroke on this gradient, and maybe I want to change the colors. Maybe I'll bring up swatches this time, so go to window, bring up swatches, and throw in some different colors here by dragging and dropping color in there. You throw that color out there. Maybe I'll drag in an orange and a yellow, or that's a light orange. Maybe I'll make that more yellow. or just pale peachy color. Okay, so let's say I'm going with that gradient. There are options for the gradient here. For stroke, we have apply gradient within stroke, apply gradient along stroke. Let's try that one. So that gives you like a nice hard point there. Kind of resembles a corner. And then there is apply gradient across stroke, which gives you kind of like this neon feel to it. It's kind of cool. I think I'll try that one. But maybe I'll make this blue a little darker. Okay. And then maybe I want to make another parent with let's see, the star tool. Take the star tool and I'm gonna click and do a 4-point star. Okay. And rotate it at 45 degrees, and then this time I'll make the stroke have a solid color. And the gradient on the fill can be radial instead of linear, radial. And I'll just make adjustments there. Maybe add some different colors. Maybe some warmer colors. Maybe I'll throw in the green. Maybe duplicate this yellow by option dragging. Oh, maybe it needs to be more, let's see, more of a peach color. All right, I'll just go with that. Okay. Oh, maybe I'll go to my gradient tool and just adjust the shape of it a little bit. Bring this down and move that around. There we go. That's more interesting. Okay, so now it's mating time, reproduction time. So in your assignment, I have methods of reproduction. So how these parents are going to get together and make the babies. So the first, most straightforward way that you can do that is by duplicating and grouping your objects. So let's say we do that with these two guys, these two parents. So for duplicating, take your selection tool, and you're going to want to select both of your objects. So you can do that by dragging a marquee that touches both objects, or you can click on one, hold shift, click on the other, and then you need to be able to duplicate. So you have to position your cursor on top of one or the other object, not in the middle, because if you're in the middle and then you want to try to duplicate or move these objects, you can't, because if I'm right here and I click and drag, I'm just going to be deselecting. So I have to be hovering over one of the objects. So either here or here, and then I can move the objects by clicking and dragging. So you have to be in ready to move mode in order to duplicate as well. So I'm hovering over an object so that you can see there's a little bounding box icon next to my arrow. That means I'm ready to move my objects. Then I hold down Option. Now when I hold down Option, you see the duplicate icon appear. So you hold Option, click and drag, release the mouse, and then release the Option key, and you have successfully duplicated your objects. So next I want to combine them. So I can do that by just simply aligning them in a certain way, and with Smart Objects checked on under View, let's see, not Smart Objects, I'm sorry, Smart Guides. If you have Smart Guides checked on, then you'll have these little pink guides appearing that help you to line objects up to each other if they're behaving properly. If the smart objects are giving you, if the smart guides are giving you trouble, then you can use the Align panel options, which you can get to when you select. You can easily access those when you select both objects at the same time. Then in your properties panel, you're gonna find your Align options, and it's gonna be set to Align to Selection as your option. If you like having your Align panel up, you can bring it up under Window in alphabetical order, Align, but having a lot of panels takes up a lot of space. Having panels open, when you can just access them. Also, you can access the Align options from the Control panel. Align to Selection is set. So, either way, I'll go ahead and use Properties. So I'm gonna use Horizontal Align Center to make sure that those are lined up nicely. Maybe I'll lower this down, and then I want to select both, and I can hit Command G, and that's simple as that. Now I have kind of a sun setting behind a pyramid. So I've got a new baby here, and I'm gonna duplicate these two, and then I can find another way to pair these. So I could have like a little Jack-in-the-Box guy, or a guy wearing a dunce cap, and that could be another group. Command G, select the objects, and then you want to group them so they stick together. So object group or Command G. So that's one thing to do. Or maybe I don't want this. If I don't want a certain offspring here, I can just delete. I know that's a bad joke, especially when I just had a baby. But this is just vector graphics. No need to worry. Nobody will be harmed in this process. These are just vector graphics. So select the objects, Option drag to duplicate, and then you can make babies. Okay, so grouping, that's one of the methods of reproduction. Let's move on to the next, which is a new tool, Pathfinder. So experiment with Pathfinder. That is another great way to recombine, to a great method of reproduction in this process. So I've duplicated the parents out, and I want to recombine these objects using Pathfinder. Um, and you saw using the shaper tool how recombining was working. Well, Pathfinder will do a lot of similar things that you're able to do with the shaper tool as well. So you can try both methods if you'd like. I'm going to go under Window and find Pathfinder in alphabetical order. There it is. And it's in a panel set conveniently tabbed with the Align panel, Transform panel. But Pathfinder is in front because that's what I selected. And then, for example, I can select these two here and then jump into the Align panel and horizontal align center. If I want to show my options to make sure I'm aligning to selection, I can, and then choose horizontal align center. And this time I want to use Pathfinder, and notice in Pathfinder we've got two sets of buttons, shape modes, and we've got pathfinders. Shape modes, you have these 4 buttons that have certain functions. When you press the button, when you just click the button, it executes the action and makes it all final. So what it says it's gonna do, and you don't have the flexibility, as much flexibility to adjust. But if you hold down Option click, then you will be able to adjust each of the shapes as their own separate entity. They'll still be separate. But what happens when you click Unite? Let's take a look. So the first button is called Unite. So I click on that. What just happened? I made a keyhole shape, but I don't have flexibility to move anything around because it's all made into one shape. So I can't move things around. So I'm going to undo that, Command Z, just so you can see what happens if I hold down the Option key when I click Unite. Now, what's different? Maybe you noticed one thing, the shadow disappeared. So there are pluses and minuses to pressing the Option key or Option clicking versus just clicking. So with Option click, what happens is the individual shapes, individual paths are retained. So the circle is still there and the triangle is still there. So you see that overlapping path area. And that's so that, because when you click off, maybe the final execution that came together of the keyhole shape is not exactly what I want. Maybe it's a little too short and stout. So what I can do is I can go up here and use my direct selection tool, or better yet, the tool under the direct selection tool, the group selection tool, and I can select the individual shapes still and move them apart from each other, make adjustments. I'm using my arrow keys to tap that circle up a little bit, click off and look at it. Well, maybe that's a little too tall, so I click back on it, or I can click on the triangle and adjust the positioning of that, click off until I get the shape that I really like. And then go back to the selection tool, select the combined shapes there. If you jump into layers, you can see what this actually is. So this is all on one layer, but if I flip open layer 1, we can see that what this has become is a compound shape. The keyhole is a compound shape made up of the polygon and the ellipse. But the shape that was on top, what was it? It was the polygon, which is a triangle. And the triangle that was on top gave its characteristics to the circle to make it seem like it's all one shape. But it's not really one shape right now. It's a compound shape. until I click on with the selection tool and I select the compound shape. Then once I'm ready, once I say, oh, I like that keyhole form, I'm going to click on that. Then I click on expand to simplify this down into one shape, into a keyhole. So I click expand, and those extra paths there are gone because now it's outlined into just the keyhole shape, and it should be listed there as just the simple path, which that's ultimately what we want. We want to simplify these as we go. So the purpose of option clicking is just to have those options to be able to move the original individual shapes to until you get the final shape that you're really going for. Okay, so let's try another shape mode, which is called minus front. The next button over functions in a similar way, but different results. So I'm just going to duplicate these. And what do you think I'm going to make now? I'm going to take this triangle and rotate it here like that. So the triangle is in the front. And I'm going to do minus front. What do you think I'm going to make? I'm going to select the two together. You always select multiple objects that are overlapping each other and in order to use the Pathfinder buttons. So if I just click the button like this, just click it, minus front, I'm not holding option. What did I just make? I just made a Pac-Man that's listed as a path now because it's just simple Pac-Man outline. But let's say I wasn't really happy with those results. I want to be able to kind of make adjustments. I want options. So I use option click so that I'll have those options because now it's in its final form. I want to be able to move the triangle and the circle apart from each other to create the shape with a little bit more trial and error, with a little bit more I just want to have the option to do that. So I'm going to Command Z and undo, and then instead of just clicking the button, I'm going to hold the option key and option click. So you see that what the difference is. The triangle is still there, although it's functioning to make a cutout in the circle, which is also, the circle path is still there in its entirety. But we're seeing what the final result is going to be ultimately. But since I have access to the original shapes, because this is not just a path, it's a compound shape with the polygon and the ellipse, but the shape is going to take on the circle or the ellipse, which is actually a circle. It's going to take on those characteristics to look like Pac-Man. I'm going to take my group select tool. I like the group select tool because I could use the direct select tool, but I have to be careful. If I'm using the direct select tool, I could still click in the middle and move the triangle around, but if I accidentally click on a point, I could distort the shape and make Pac-Man. He looks like he needs some dental work now. I'm going to undo that. Command Z. So you got to be careful with the direct selection tool. You could distort the shape by moving the points. The group select tool lets you select the entire shape within a group without accidentally selecting a point, and then you cannot move the points around. The group select tool forces you to select the entire shape within the group. So that's why I like to use the group select tool in this process, to keep the shapes intact and not distorted. So I'm moving this triangle around now because I can, because it's a compound shape. So I could say, well, maybe Pac-Man should be hungrier and he should have a much bigger mouth. So I can move the triangle way in and click outside and look at it and say, does that look like the Pac-Man I remember from the 80s arcade? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe Pac-Man had a more small, dainty little mouth. Click outside, look at it. Maybe not. So I'll just move it in, click outside until I get the Pac-Man that I'm really going for from what I remember from my childhood. Which one is Pac-Man? Is it like that? Maybe like that. Okay, so if I'm happy with that, then I go to my selection tool, click, the whole compound shape is selected. What do I want to do to simplify it down to just the Pac-Man shape? Because right now it's still the circle and the triangle, but revealing just the Pac-Man. I want to click expand, and that cleans it up. Now it's simplified. That's what you want to do. If you option click these buttons, you want to eventually go back to the selection tool, select the entire compound path or compound shape, and click the expand button, so it simplifies it down. So now it should be listed as a path in the layer. Yep, the Pac-Man path. Okay, so that's, I'm gonna say that they had those 3 kids, and now these guys are gonna get together. Oh, one thing I want to do to this, I'll do that to this shape, is just for fun, I'm going to outline this stroke. We saw last week how we can use the width tool to create variable width on a stroke. Another way to control your stroke is to outline it and turn it into a shape or a filled shape. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go up to Object, Path, Outline Stroke, and then it's going to add some more some more complexity in what I can do when I recombine and use Pathfinder. So I recommend you try outlining a stroke. So I'm going to go Object, Path, Outline Stroke. So now, what has this become? It was just a simple star shape with a fill and a stroke on it. Now it becomes a group that has a path that's the star. I can use the group selection tool to select just the path that's the star, and then just which this is listed as a compound path, which we'll talk about. We'll learn more about compound paths later. But this is now what I'm selecting here. This is the stroke, but it was the stroke. Now it's actually a filled shape of the stroke. And I can move it around like that, do cool things with it like that. I can also use the direct selection tool and click and release. Click on the points, outlining it, and change the shape that way. But I'm not going to do that. I'll leave that alone. And then, now these are ready to combine. So I'm going to select the 2. These are ready for reproduction. And I'm going to option drag out duplicates and then find some way to recombine these. Maybe select the 2 and then let's see. Oops, I'm gonna make sure the 2 are selected, and then align, center them, and then let's try this next one here called intersect and see what that does. So if I just click that, So that's a little hard to tell what it does, but basically whatever's the intersection is going to be what it keeps. And since the stroke was on top, it's only keeping the stroke. But I'm going to undo that because that was a little hard to understand. Let's see if we get different results if I hold Option and click. Option click. Yeah, so you can see better. It's strange, but when sometimes you get different results when you Option click versus just clicking, and you can see that the intersecting part, the overlapping part, is what remains, and everything else goes away with intersect. But because I Option click, then I can kind of pick it apart with my group select tool and see if I can make something a little more interesting. So I can kind of move things around like that. That's kind of cool. Move the individual shapes around. Till I come up with something. There's like this star up here. Can move around. Say move that up and move this down till I come up with something fairly interesting. So I could say, okay, well, that's kind of cool. So then I go to my selection tool, select it, and then click expand to remove everything extra that I don't need. So that could be a baby there. Okay, and then now I'll select these two, Option drag, and try something different. Maybe select the two here like that, align them. Maybe I'll bring this one to the front. So, oops, let me just select it, right click, arrange, bring to front, and select the two. And then I'll try in Pathfinder, I'm going to try intersect on this one. Intersect. No, I'm going to undo that. I'll try Option click on that. Okay, so that's kind of cool. And maybe I just want to go with that and click expand. And so now I have that as a baby. So that's intersect. And then I'm going to try something different. Maybe bring, let's see, I'll select these two, center align them, go back to Pathfinder. This time I'm going to try exclude. So you saw intersect was keeping the overlap. Exclude should be cutting out the overlapping area. So let's see how that works with exclude. Maybe I'll bring this down a little bit. So if I select the two and then I click exclude. Okay, so you see what exclude did. So that's kind of interesting. Maybe I'll keep that. Select these two, Option drag. Let's try exclude again. Just use the smart object selecting both, and then I'll try Option clicking exclude. So it's a little different than the results of this one. And then with Option click, I can use my group select tool and pick things apart. Let's see, this one here. Oops. Maybe that one. go somewhere, this could go somewhere else. So that's kind of interesting. Wait, let's see. So you kind of just play with it until you are able to come up with a new form that you find interesting. Or you could delete parts. Okay, let's say I like that. And then this one, I can take things apart, but you don't have access to the original forms, but I could still take things apart and delete them, or maybe I like that. I don't know. You can also try, let's see if I option drag these, and I try just a different order. So if I bring this to the front, Command Shift right bracket, and you can change the size. And just select these two and center align them. And then I'll try in Pathfinder exclude. I'll try option clicking it. Okay, that's kind of cool. And then I can go in and let's see, move things around. And take things apart. Ooh, that's kind of interesting. Okay, so let's see. So I got these forms here. So maybe I'll get rid of this one and just have this one and this one. And then, so that is creating the second generation. And then I want to start to give rise to the third generation. But wait, let me just adjust this a little bit if I can. And I haven't expanded this one yet, which I should. So this one keeps getting all stuck together. Okay, just trying to make sure things are kind of lined up. Okay, so then this one, then once I get it in the form I want, I can click expand and simplify it down. Okay, that one turned out a little weird. Okay, but anyway, so I'm gonna then move on to the next generation and continue with Pathfinder, and we'll talk about blending as well and how that works. Okay, so let's say Pac-Man and this guy get together. So we duplicate them, option drag, and try to put them together in an interesting way. And then we can use Pathfinder. I'm going to move on to the Pathfinders options, which they are different than shape modes because you don't have the option to option click. It's just, but you do the same kind of steps where you need to overlap your objects. You need to select both of the objects or more than one object, overlap them, select the objects, and then you just click. And each of the Pathfinder options will execute a certain action on your objects and group them and combine them in a different way. So we have divide first. So I'm going to click divide and see what happens. So let me hit Command plus to zoom in. So we'll see what divide does. So click divide. Did you see anything happen? It added a stroke here, right? What divide does, if you go to the group select tool, you can see that everywhere there was an overlapping area, it's created a division. So this is now its own little shape where there's an overlap. So now I can move it around. I can put it on top like a little hat. Maybe I don't want to do divide like that. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo. So let me try this a little differently. Let's see, because I want to line things up before I just hit divide. I think that's better alignment. So then I click on divide, and then I can go to my group select tool. I can click the little shape there and move it around, put a little hat on him. There we go. That looks cute. So now that's already all grouped together, because when you execute a Pathfinder option, it turns it into a group. So that's that's the baby of those two. What a beautiful baby. And then let's say these two get together, even though they are actually brother and sister, but that's okay. No problem. These are just vector graphics. We don't need to worry about birth defects, and you are the designer here, so you can make choices to avoid those. So I'm gonna just select these two, shift click and option drag, and yeah, you are the intelligent designer here, so you can avoid birth defects. So I'm just gonna put these together like that. Maybe that'll be nice. Maybe center align, make sure they're center aligned. Yeah, they are. And then divide might be nice on this one. Go to Pathfinder divide. Let's see, divide. Didn't work. Maybe this wasn't expanded. Yeah, that's the problem. See, that's the problem, that it's not gonna work in the next generation. It's like it's not gonna be fertile for the next generation unless you expand. So I'm gonna expand that and try that again. Delete. Okay, so selecting these two, option dragging, and I want to select them and align, center align, there we go. And then let's try divide. See, now it works the way it's supposed to. So that's divide. Let me try something different though. Command Z. Let's try trim. Okay, so with trim, it, just like all the Pathfinder options, it combines everything into a group. But what trim does, instead of, unlike divide where all the overlapping areas become their own separate shapes, trim, whatever's underneath something, it's going to make it disappear. And trim actually is what I like to use to crop off the edges of something. So when you are making your landscape, for example, you have like a background. Let's make it like a blue background. And then let's say you had your clouds. I'm going to make simple clouds. Where's my swatches panel? Need my swatches. My swatches are up, but let me bring them up again. They're attached to here. Okay, so I'm just gonna make a quick little landscape here. Let's say we had some trees and some hills. Okay, so let's say that was the landscape. Now we wanted to crop off the edges. How about? So I know you were tempted to crop off the edges. Well, trim will let you do that. Will let you trim off the edges. That's hence the name. So the way to do that with using trim is you use it in combination with another shape. So I could take a rectangle, and it can be any color. Let me do Shift Command A to deselect all. And let's say I just make a red rectangle on the side here, and I line it up to the edge of my landscape, and then I select whatever objects I want to delete. So I select the rectangle and hold Shift and select objects that I want to trim off the sides. So those. Or I could select everything and it'll work too. So you see the paths underneath the red rectangle right now. Everything's selected, and then I go to the trim button in Pathfinder and watch what happens. It will remove everything under that rectangle, and this is all a group now. So if I want this edge to just be clean, I don't want this rectangle showing, then I can go to my group select tool, click outside, click to deselect, click the rectangle, press delete. And I could keep doing that wherever I want to make a nice straight edge. I can select my rectangle, shift click my rectangle, and then I can trim, and then I can take my group select the rectangle, press delete, and I can do that all the way around. And trim, and then I can just delete that rectangle. And so that's how you can crop off the edges of your landscape. But I'm going to delete that. So that's just a practical use of trim. Practical use there. But for our assignment, you can just use it kind of in an experimental way, combining these objects and trying them out with trim. Okay, so that's trim. What else? Merge. Let's try merge. So let's say these two then get together. The plot is thickening. Now there's either infidelity going on with this love triangle, or there was a divorce and a remarriage, something. Okay, so then I put these together in some interesting way, hopefully. This is starting to get to be a train wreck, though. Okay, I'm just going to select all these, and let's see what happens. Let me just align them. Let's see what happens with merge. So they're all selected, and I click merge. So merge kind of simplified it down, which is exactly what it needed, I think. And then I can take my group select tool and I can select, let's see, what can I select here? I can select individual pieces and move things around if I want to create my form. Some kind of interesting artwork here. Or let's see. Or if there are little pieces that we don't want, we can delete them to alter the form, make it cleaner, more interesting to look at. Oh, I'll bring those back. Okay. Okay, so then that is the child between those two. Okay, so now what do I have? Do I have 3 generations? I do have 3 generations. Let's see. Maybe another brother sister get together here just to fill the chart up. So how about these two? Let's see. Oh, I want to talk about the next button over, which would be crop. So crop is great if you are kind of designing a pattern and then you want to use a shape. Like if I want to make a pattern of little Pac-Man, lots of little Pac-Man. And I'm just duplicating them out and making a pattern. And maybe when I duplicate all these Pac-Man, let's see, just duplicate another one. So once I duplicate them all out, I'll go to my align options and I want to do a few things. I want to align the top or the bottom. I want to go to distribute objects and distribute them evenly. And let's do this. And then I can group that, Command G, and then just duplicate a bunch of them. So then I have an area of a pattern. And then I'll just, well, maybe one more. Then I'll just align the edge here, there, like that, and then distribute the spacing between them. Okay, maybe I want to have a shape behind everything that's a certain color. I'll send it to the back, right click, arrange, send to back. So now I have this pattern. And then let's say I want the keyhole shape to be my shape that I cropped the pattern in. So then I put the keyhole in the front. And I select everything. and then I just click in Pathfinder I go to crop. So now it cropped the pattern in the shape of the keyhole. But the thing about Pathfinder, some of these functions don't like strokes, so it lost the stroke. But I could add the stroke back to it. Bring the stroke to the front, maybe make a black stroke on everything. So there, that is the combination between Pac-Man and the keyhole. When they get together, they have a baby. That baby. Okay, so that's using crop, the way crop is intended to be used. Another one you could try. Let's just put these together here. Say I put all these guys together. Zoom in here with Command plus. Okay, is another one is the last one here is, well, not the last one. This one near the end is outline. So what does outline do? If I click outline, it just turns everything into just the strokes, and then you can, let's see, select, and you can make them thicker, and you can use the group select tool and select individual parts of the strokes and change the colors. And see how I can select just parts of the strokes and change the colors and make something kind of just like an interesting line art from the art that I selected and clicked outline for. Then finally there's minus back, which does the same thing, similar to what we could do with minus front, but you put the object that you want to make the cutout in the back. So I could make a Pac-Man with, same thing, I can make a Pac-Man using minus back. I just have to have the triangle in the back. So I'll do Command Shift left bracket to send it to the back, select the two, and this time you don't have the option to option click, so it's a final result. When I click this button, that I've got the Pac-Man that I've, without the original shapes retained. So that's the way the Pathfinders work. You just select multiple objects that are overlapping and click, and then you'll have a result, a new shape. So that, using Pathfinder is a great method of reproduction, but you can use other methods. We have, besides Pathfinder, we have using Shape Builder, which you saw last week with when I made the cloud by combining ellipses. So you can also use Shape Builder as a method. I didn't list it, but besides Shape Builder, there is also Live Paint Bucket, which is really fun to use. With Live Paint Bucket, let's say we combine these two. You might want to try Live Paint Bucket as a method of combining. So let's say these two, I'm just going to align them, and then if I want to use Live Paint, that is hiding, well, first Shape Builder, very easy to use. Just select it. You have to have your object selected, step one, then use Shape Builder to click and drag and combine into a new shape, just like what Pathfinder does. I'm going to undo that though. Another option to try is Live Paint Bucket, which is very cool. um, lets you color the separate areas hanging outside of an overlap, or to it lets you select and color the overlapping areas. So if I choose a color here in swatches, I can click, and it's telling me that there are complex visual appearances because I'm using effects. So the effects will be taken off. So I'll say okay there. Now I can select individual parts, and this would be a live paint group. And you have on your cursor 3 colors, and if you use your arrow keys, you can cycle through, and it's just going through the swatches to choose different swatches. So I can click and select different colors and click, and I can even select parts of the strokes. If I switch into live paint selection tool, I can select a piece there and change the color. Select just that piece of that stroke and make changes to the colors. And then that becomes a live paint group. And again, a live paint group should be expanded before moving on to the next generation. So you should click expand either from control panel or properties. There's an expand button under quick actions, or you can go to object, live paint, expand. So that could be a baby there. Actually, that would be, let's see, what was that? That would be a baby up here. And if you are running out of room, remember you can delete, or you can simply, you could just select a bunch of objects and scale them all together, holding shift to constrain the proportions so they all fit in your chart. You make space. Okay, one more that I didn't talk about is using blending. Let's talk about blending. So let's say I wanted to put, let's see, these two together as a blend. So I'm gonna just duplicate them. And then for blending, maybe I'll bring this guy to the front, Pac-Man to the front, Command Shift right bracket. So let's say I want Pac-Man to blend into the keyhole. There are a few ways to blend. So one is select the objects you want to blend together. So I click on one, shift click the other. Then I can go to object, mouse over blend, and choose make. Let's see what that does. So that blends the two together. But if I wanted to alter my settings, I can go to object, blend, and then choose blend options. And right now it's blending based on smooth color, but I can choose a certain number of blend steps. So wow, smooth color is 254 steps. Actually, I just want maybe, let's say 15, and preview that. Now you can see the steps. Maybe I want more, 20, and preview that. And how the steps are oriented, aligned to page or aligned to path, you can choose and say okay. And then I can use my group select tool and click on the individual shapes, or I could use if I switch into my direct select tool, I can mouse over the path that the shapes are blending on and click on the endpoints to move around. I can elongate it, pull it in. I can bend the blend if I take my pen tool and mouse over this path, I'll see a plus appear. Then I can click to add a point and put a bend in my blend and take my direct select tool and grab that point and kind of bend it around and make sort of a fun accordion or a Chinese dragon. Or not, I could just delete that point with the pen tool as well, mousing over the point. I see a minus, I click, and then I can go to my direct selection tool and click on the individual points and create something kind of different and interesting with my blend. Okay, so that's another baby. And then I want to select all of these, move them in. Okay, the next video is going to be about lining up your objects and adding lines.